honor de presentar este panel atómico maravilloso, así que estoy muy contenta con este gran placer. Tenemos preparado un panel que habla mucho más de las mujeres, pero veo que... ¿Cuántas mujeres hay acá hoy día? Bueno, vamos a tratar de hacerlo. Queremos hablar de la experiencia de las mujeres, queremos ir un poco más a cómo llegamos a esto, ¿ya? Entonces quiero partir, porque ya todas se han presentado un poco, además Cecilia, quiero partir con una pregunta. Hay que esperar que estén con el traductor. Bueno, un poco, en el fondo, queríamos hacer un panel que motivara a las mujeres a tomar este camino de vida. Creemos que el emprendimiento es una forma de vida, ¿ya? Son personas que toman riesgos, que salen a buscar sus sueños. Y por eso es tan interesante tenerlos acá. Por mientras que... ¡Bravo, Ingrid! Bueno, y como creemos que es un camino de vida, creemos que las personas que salen a luchar por sus sueños, que tratan de hacer lo que aman todos los días, que en el fondo hacen su hobby de trabajo, además ayudan al mundo a ser un lugar mejor. Y por eso yo lo había pensado de esta manera, que sentía que podíamos hablar mucho más desde la vida, desde la experiencia de vida, de por qué estamos hoy día acá sentadas, cómo llegamos hasta acá, qué pasó en nuestras vidas, por qué somos emprendedoras y hay tan pocas emprendedoras, por qué salimos a buscar nuestros sueños y no le pasa a las otras mujeres. Entonces quería que partiéramos y que en este caso partiéramos todas hablando, y esta pregunta se las hago a todas y me gustaría partir a Robin contestando porque está con él. No, pero la pregunta es, ¿qué pasó que haga que hoy día esté sentada acá?
This way is easier. Just as you were saying, the way of life, I remember when I started this company, Zipcar, I was listening to the radio, and on the radio there was, or maybe even earlier, I was listening to the radio and they said, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, watch out, because you're going to have to work 100 hours a week and it's going to consume your life. And I remember long ago listening to that and thinking, oh, yeah, like that's too much for me. Like, I don't want to spend my life in it. But when I started my own company, I want to tell you that 100 hours a week, that's nothing, because you're thinking and doing what you want to be thinking and doing. And so it's a very funny thing that from the outside you think, oh, that's too much work, too much time, I can't do it. But when it's your passion and your thing, you are thinking about it 24 hours a day, every single minute. So that's just one point. I do think entrepreneurs have a can-do attitude, that if you look at something, do you think to yourself, I want to buy that? Or do you think, you know, I could make that, or I could do something, you know, I could achieve it? And so I am a person who, there is never a problem that I see that I don't think about, how would you fix that? And so it's, I think, embedded in me to see problems and to want to answer them.
Ingrid.
Thank you. And Marcus, thanks for your piece. I think in terms of what inspired me to be an entrepreneur is I always like to share with especially the parents in the room how important that sense of mentoring your children is. And my husband and I, we don't have any children of our own, but work with kids all over the world, so I feel like they're all my kids. But I did grow up in a family that my father was an engineer and my mother was a psychologist. And as a little child, I actually, at a very young age, I was failing out of school, actually. And the principal of the school told my parents that I was basically a problem child. And they used, you know, different words then, but basically thought I was learning disabled. I couldn't be taught, I was failing out of school, and I was sent off to a special school, is what they called it, a special school. They sent along my own bus, a special bus. It was for special kids. And in the United States, when you say special, it really does refer to kind of learning disabled. And it's one of those things that as a kid, a lot of kids will make fun of you, you know, you're a special kid. It was my parents, though, that really were the ones that, again, this was back in the 4th grade, and they taught me to, instead of taking that criticism by the kids and who were calling me special, and they were doing it to be mean, my parents said, "You're really special. You're going to special school on the special bus for special kids." So I grew up thinking I was pretty awesome. and it really, really looking back and reflecting on that time as a child, it continues to inspire me all the time to think the analogy to life in general is we can take any kind of situation, and like Robin said, we can look at a product and say, oh, I can buy that, I can be a consumer. Or you can look at the situation and say, how can I make it better? How can I look at it from an optimistic point of view where I can create opportunities for others? And so that, through that experience of being a child, that was instilled in me at an early age. And I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I just didn't know exactly what it was. So, but that's part of being an entrepreneur. You just kind of figure it out as you start doing things.
¿Yo?
Well, in my case, necessity is the mother of inventions. And I had actually been in executive sales and executive sales leadership for technology companies most of my career. And when I was faced with getting a divorce and having a 1-year-old, I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll start a company so I have time for home. That never happened. I have a daughter who grew up in the company. We had bunk beds in the actual office. We had kitchens put in because we all came in and nobody left. But on the other hand, what brought me here to where I am is that through that great endeavor of doing a startup and doing what I do natural, most women do this all the time, we're always raising money. We just never raise it for ourselves. And as a board advisor to Springboard, where we believe that education has to be experienced education, it's the great equalizer, as well as corporate and innovative global connections for women. So what brought me here is seeing how Springboard helped my company, helped your company, helped us all grow up in a world where we're being elbowed by men investors and men entrepreneurs. We realized, let's go to Chile, let's open up an education office in Santiago, and let's create the greatest equalizer, which is experienced education and global connections.
Cecilia.
¿Mi turno?
Sí, tu turno. Y yo quiero decir, además de Cecilia, que, bueno, maravillosa fue la respuesta, de Cecilia, todos tenemos como en el inconsciente colectivo de Chile el Miss Universo, como una partida. Entonces la pregunta es, ¿cómo partió Cecilia? ¿Partió en el Miss Universo?
Parte mucho antes, siento. Nací, desafortunadamente, los primeros años de vida estuve bastante enferma y entonces entraba y salía del hospital, y la enfermera que fue contratada para ayudar a mi mamá en primera instancia con esos primeros meses se terminó quedando casi 7 años. Y ella me crió, me cuidó, y cuando partió para mí fue un desgarro del alma. Pero junto con tener ese impacto tan doloroso y ese miedo tan impactante de sentirme sola frente al mundo, también me hizo recapacitar que mi vida era mía y que yo tenía que emprender y crear y construir la vida que necesitaba para mí. Así es que diría que las dos cosas que me han llevado a ser de alguna manera emprendedora, que es un poco el tema, uno es aprender y darse cuenta que uno el miedo lo puede vencer, y 2, entender que en realidad el éxito es solo una de las caras de una misma moneda y la otra es el fracaso. Por lo tanto, aprender a abrazar el fracaso y entender que el fracaso es el que te enseña a tener éxito, muchas veces incluso pavimenta el camino para que tú realmente llegues a tu gran meta, es lo que me ha hecho tener esa confianza. Ingrid hace un rato atrás en el panel anterior también hablaba de eso, porque probablemente las mujeres no emprenden tanto, y es porque necesitan creer más en ellas, ¿no? Necesitan tener esa confianza férrea de que pueden. Y yo te diría que a mí estas dos cosas que me pasaron en la vida, y una tiene que ver también con el Miss Universo, porque cuando salí elegida Miss Chile y partí a representar al país al Miss Universo, hice una pequeña escala en Cartagena de Indias, en el Miss Sudamérica, y bueno, no clasifiqué. No quedé ni siquiera entre las 5 finalistas. Éramos 9 candidatas y yo era una de las 4 perdedoras. Y partir de ahí al Miss Universo fue dramático, porque estaba obviamente derrotada, sumamente desalentada, me sentía muy frustrada, muy enojada porque se me había ocurrido esta estúpida idea de meterme en un concurso de belleza. Y ahora tenía que llegar a Singapur a representar al país en un lugar donde ya no competía con las latinoamericanas, sino que competía con mujeres de 2 metros que le salen las piernas de por aquí. Entonces yo digo, Dios mío, ¿cómo lo voy a hacer? Y entonces como no me quedó otra, y esta es literalmente la realidad, uno dice, ok, no se barajan alternativas de triunfo, de éxito, entonces lo único que me queda es disfrutar la experiencia. Y en ese proceso me aboqué tanto a cada instante, a cada encuentro, a compartir con cada una de las jóvenes que participaban, a preocuparme de cada una de ellas, de sus intereses, de aprender de su cultura, tratar de hablar en su idioma. Ensayé mi poquito francés y junto con eso armamos musicales increíbles. Yo era bailarina de ballet, yo bailé 18 años ballet clásico, y entonces armar los musicales fue un desafío maravilloso. Y ya competir no era el tema, yo no estaba compitiendo, simplemente estaba tratando de ser la mejor versión de mí misma. Y finalmente el hecho de que se materializara la corona de Miss Universo en mi cabeza fue porque tenía una sensación de haber ganado mucho antes de ser coronada, porque la experiencia había sido maravillosa y ya me sentía triunfadora y con un estado infinito de gracia, porque de verdad lo pasé la raja en el Miss Universo. Y creo que cuando uno lo pasa bien, cuando uno hace las cosas con entusiasmo, que además etimológicamente es una palabra del griego que significa enteos, en Dios, andar con los dioses o estar comunicado, o con la fuente, si no queremos catalogarlo de Dios, nos ilumina, nos hace estar en un estado de gracia particular. Y la verdad es que ese estado de gracia es el que propicia conseguir tus más grandes sueños.
Bueno, la Cecilia ganó 2 veces. Primero en la experiencia y en haberlo pasado increíble, y eso logró que además el resultado fuera maravilloso, que yo creo que es un poco lo que les pasa a los emprendedores, esa pasión, cuando uno la pone, lo disfruta, lo pasa bien y en realidad no está viendo el final del camino, sino que disfrutando el camino. Y como dicen, o sea, en el fondo esta cosa de tomar la rienda de la vida, qué importante es para hacerse cargo de salir a buscar las oportunidades. Y un poco como estamos en el fondo hablando de emprendimiento femenino, y en esto también les quiero dejar bien libre la pregunta, ¿qué consideran esencial para emprender? Pero no es un panel de emprendimiento femenino, si quieren lo hacen del punto de vista femenino o si quieren lo hacen del punto de vista, en el fondo, solo emprendimiento, digamos. Pero, ¿qué es lo esencial para emprender? Partamos, Ingrid, por allá.
So just to make sure I'm clearly understanding, so what is a key to a successful entrepreneur or just entrepreneurship in general?
In general.
Okay. So I think, so first of all, we've heard about it a lot today. I used to host a television show on CNBC in the United States and had a chance to interview some of the most successful entrepreneurs from around the world. And it was interesting because people would say to me, what did you find out? What did you learn was the key to being a successful entrepreneur? And it was interesting because of all these people I interviewed, it came down to 2 things. And they said, do what you're passionate about and be persistent about it. And as I've gone through my career, it really is almost as simple as that in terms of where do you start. And that's what opportunity do you see out there that makes you feel passionate? The second thing that I would say is always, entrepreneurship, and you were talking about the God relationship. I'm also very spiritual, and I believe that entrepreneurship is really this balance between being a person that is very passionate about something, you're spiritually driven or driven by a bigger purpose, but you're also, there is this sense of ego to believe that you can actually make it happen. And it's how do you keep that ego in check in a way that you humble yourself to say, I'm not quite sure how to do this, and attracting the best people around you. So how do you find people who are way smarter than you and get out of their way and provide them with support so that together you can all win? And the third thing that I would say about being a successful entrepreneur really comes down to knowing your business from a financial perspective. I can't reiterate how many entrepreneurs and CEOs today, Richard Branson actually is the person who brought global awareness to the fact that less than 10% of all entrepreneurs out there actually really know the numbers of their business. And I can tell you from my own experience of when I first started out thinking I knew the numbers, you know how to scale and grow, I really didn't. And it wasn't until I took full ownership of saying, I don't really understand this balance sheet or this, the profit and loss statement. I'm not really sure about cash flow. It wasn't until I owned that and said, I'm going to figure this out and do something about that, that all of a sudden you gain this power to have conversations with people who, like I mentioned earlier, are money makers, deal makers. When you know the language of money, you can make anything happen. So those are the three things I would say. So power.
Yes, all of those three things. I agree. So I'll try to do some things that are different. So this idea of persistence, absolutely. That if you're building something, it is necessarily hard, otherwise it would have already been done. So there are so many hard parts, and just you had a comment that entrepreneurs love the process. I want to say I hated the process at many moments. At many moments I thought, I just want to lie in my bed and cry and never come out of this room. It is way, way, way too hard. And why did I succeed? Because I got out of the room and I kept going. Those people around me. Having good people around me. So just adding to this conversation, also this idea of really understanding in your business inside and out, absolutely. But so something new would be, I talk to entrepreneurs about intellectual honesty, that when we're starting a company, we are constantly selling. We are saying to the investor, yes, it's a great idea. To employees, come work for me even though I have no money. Quit your old job, come work for me. To customers, we're saying, it's a fabulous thing. Come do it. So you're constantly telling people how great it is, but in reality, there's a lot of stuff that's not working behind. So in order to succeed, you, the CEO, in your own mind, have to be really honest about what is working and what doesn't work. You have to know what your failings are and who you should be hiring around you. Are you the best person to be doing something, or should someone else be doing it? What is the thing that doesn't work in your company? You've got to change as fast as you can. So I think there's this success is bound up in being a learning organization and moving as fast as you can. That's what big companies can't do that. Little companies, so see problems and change them as fast as you can. And also, the intellectual honesty also is, wow, here's an amazing opportunity, and I'm going to go catch that fast. So it's really learning very fast. And I feel like there's this incredible balance of persistence and reality. Most businesses fail, and I feel this is a very delicate thing to say, that I want you to be persistent and I also want you to be honest. So I started one company that after I had raised money for it, a year and a half later, I gave half that money back and I said, this is not going to work. In the best of circumstances, this company is not going to succeed. And that company I closed in 2009 maybe, and in the last 6 years, no one in the US has been able to do it, and dozens have tried. So I felt like I did the right thing. So part of intellectual honesty is to know that you have a dumb idea, that your product isn't something that people want to buy. So we talk a lot today about pivoting. Part of this intellectual honesty and perseverance, I feel like there's this funny balance going on that, yeah, you have to keep pushing, but you should be paying attention. And if you are wrong, do something about it. And if you're really, really wrong, stop. Go do something else.
Just to say to Robin that yes, it's so difficult. O sea, es muy difícil emprender y en verdad sabemos que es muy difícil, y yo lo que quiero decir es que hay que tratar de disfrutar el camino, porque la mayoría de las veces son fracasos. O sea, la mayoría de las veces y los intentos que uno hace es un fracaso que va, y en el tiempo, como decía Cecilia, llega a ser que uno tome el triunfo porque uno aprende de cada uno de eso y tiene que ver con una cantidad de horas que uno le dedique a algo también. Y yo creo que en el emprendimiento parte es tomárselo como juego, disfrutarlo, porque es muy, muy difícil. Y como diría Steve Jobs, por eso son muy pocos los que lo logran, porque la mayoría se rinden en el camino.
There's this one quote that I want to put out there, which is the person who was the CEO of IBM. He said, if you want to increase your success rate, double your failure rate. And
Bueno, indudablemente lo que ha dicho Ingrid y ya con Robin, creo que hay varios elementos sobre la mesa que son esenciales al momento de emprender. Y yo quiero volver a recalcar el tema de la confianza, de tener la certeza, porque no hay peor manera de emprender un camino pensando que uno puede fallar o teniendo miedo. Cuando uno camina con convicción es muy difícil hacerlo con miedo. Y cuando uno no tiene esa certeza plena de qué es lo que quiere hacer y está invirtiendo el tiempo porque para uno es esencial y ve dibujado casi el proyecto concluido, si no lo vas a hacer de esa manera, mejor no lo hagas. Porque siempre, siempre van a haber problemas, siempre van a haber muchos obstáculos. Como decía Robin en esa cita, ¿no es cierto? Si quieres duplicar tu fórmula para tener éxito, tienes que tener el doble de fracasos.
Too many of us start something and we're not willing to finish it. Too many of us get threatened about competition. You're out of your league. You've never done this before. And then you say to yourself, in the spiritual platform we're on, God didn't make me smart. He just made me brave. This I got to see. So between having resolve, being good for your word, that will make the difference on the endeavor you've started, because so many of us forget what you're about to start. You have all the components inside you. And lastly, what you got to have as a great entrepreneur is broadband. If you can't get out into the world, if you can't keep a Skype connection up to have a decent conversation and a graphical conversation, then you are limited.
Bueno, yo quiero agregar una sola cosa que creo esencial también, y es ser un poco obsesivo y muy llevado de tu idea, que es importante en los emprendedores, porque la cantidad de no que vas a tener en el camino son impresionantes. Y bueno, para seguir me gustaría un poco que habláramos en el fondo en esto, Ingrid y John, que están las dos apoyando mujeres. Ingrid, tú dices que vas en el fondo a impactar a más de 1 billón de personas de aquí al 2020, mujeres, tengo entendido. ¿Cómo se hace eso? ¿Cómo logra uno impactar a 1 billón de mujeres en el fondo en 10 años o en algo más de 10 años?
Yeah, well, it's empowering a billion. It's empowering 1 billion women by 2020, and it's really, this was something that I was very inspired to do after selling the last companies that I was involved in, and I'll share a little bit later today some of certainly the challenges that I faced as an entrepreneur building and growing my businesses, and I talked a little bit about confidence earlier, and I'm just incredibly, I feel like it is my responsibility and my role in life now to pay it forward and help other women see themselves as leaders and also successful entrepreneurs. And the interesting thing about empowering 1 billion women by 2020, the way that we're doing that is providing them the tools, technology, and resources that they need to see themselves as leaders and successful entrepreneurs. And I knew the only way that I would achieve a vision like that as one person, and trust me, when I understood this was my calling, I thought, this is the craziest idea ever, and how does one person lead a movement this way? And I knew the only way that that I'd be able to even be part of that kind of vision is to again, be humble and focus on how do you create global leverage. And it's actually that vision that brought me to Dell. The reason that I am inspired every day, I work with entrepreneurs globally with Dell, but what originally brought me there was I knew I needed to work with a global technology platform that would give me instantaneous leverage to women around the world. Because ultimately, and the reason I've built my companies, and they've all been tech companies, is technology and financial literacy really are the key enablers and escalator to your success as entrepreneurs and certainly global entrepreneurs. So that really is what inspired me to go there. We'll reach those women through technology. I can't reiterate more how important broadband is. Through a smartphone and broadband, you can open up for a woman or an entrepreneur in Chile or Africa, markets around the world, and this is absolutely critical. And then I'll just mention I work in policy and then also media, because those having the alignment with the policymakers who help create an environment that makes it easy to build and grow companies is critical. So Dell and I do a lot of work in the policy arena and with the United Nations Foundation on a global level, and then in media as well, doing opportunities like this, because if you don't know what we're trying to do, then you don't know, and we can't move the needle. So that's why we do it. That's how we'll do it. Thank you.
And John, Springboard, cuéntanos cómo lo hacen para ayudar y apoyar a las mujeres a través de Springboard.
Sí. One of the things I found in the last 13 years was the fact that while as Americans, everyone thinks, oh, you're just Americans, it's so easy for you, you probably just go in there and you ask for the same money and you get the same rights, and it was easy for you, but we're different. We have I said, no, most countries look like Southeast America. There is 10 states in the Southeast that look like all of Chile. It is scarcely populated, resource-rich, and educationally, intellectually challenged. And through the program, our endeavors at Springboard, we figured out that two things made sense for women. Where men have had generational knowledge and support and connections, that education was the great equalizer among mujeres. If I can teach you what I know, and you will listen to me, because I'm not a Harvard MBA or a Harvard professor, I've actually lived through hundreds of millions of dollars of fundraising, hundreds of millions of dollars of money being wasted, shareholder rights, employment rights. There's 600 of us that have gone through this in the last 13 years. And what we have seen is the benefit is that when I tell you why you need to do something and what my experience is, like that, you get it. It's the greatest equalizer. I can flatten 60 years of entrepreneurship among men and put women at the table because they are working from the generations of what we've already learned. And then the second issue is the way to challenge this in being successful at the table is connections. There's not a person I can't call, or Robin is 3 phone calls away from anyone where I can say, I got a company, why don't you take a look at it? And they're like, absolutely, how can we support you? It's the greatest equalizer is education, experienced education, as well as connections. Connections that actually take your idea or your product into a better process or into a global reach for their consumers. So we believe those are the two issues that would help all women across Americas to succeed.
Around the world.
Well, okay, I gotta do a Chilean pitch here. I've been coming for 2 years here. We are looking to open up an education center. And people say, why Chile? I said, I've been to Australia, I've been to Israel, I've been to Italy. You think you have a challenge being a woman. I've never seen a country more gender blind. I sit in meetings where it is accepted that, yes, women should be at the table, what are we doing wrong? Versus I've been in meetings in government and local meetings all over the world where they're like, oh, we're still playing that card where we think women should have jobs? Oh, that's right, that's the meeting I'm in. There is such a disparity all over the world that Chileans should be proud of the fact that in your DNA has always been global citizenship. You're in boats, then you're on trains and planes, and then you're in vessels, and now you're on the internet. You've been exporting your business forever, genetically. And with that has always been a more gender neutral of businesses that work. In a farm, the family worked it. In mining, the family worked it. Now in digital medias and digital presentations, how many women said, well, if I can't go to Parsons Design School, I'm just going to invent and go ahead and create 80% of the market for IKEA. Anyone here at the table? Please take a moment and thank yourselves as Chileans that you are more gender blind than anywhere else in the world.
Well, bueno, John, genial la respuesta. Quiero decir que está lleno, así como John, que se viene Springboard a Chile, que es una maravilla para todas las mujeres que necesitamos, en el fondo, apoyo para ser emprendedores. Pero en Chile tenemos grandes lugares para que nos apoyen a los emprendedores. Y uno es la Asociación de Emprendedores, que nadie que no sea, o sea, cualquiera de acá que quiera ser emprendedor debe entrar, debe meterse. La verdad es que es una maravilla. Es la voz de los emprendedores, tiene un montón de cursos y ayudas para los que estén partiendo el camino. Yo nunca he visto algo que traiga mejor, en el fondo, valor presente, muchos años de aprendizaje. Así que los dejo a todos invitados a la SET, así como ustedes apoyan, nosotros acá tenemos también nuestras asociaciones y espacios. Bueno, aquí me toca con Robin. Yo tenía una pregunta que era mi pregunta favorita con Robin, que era, hablemos de colaboración, que es mi tema preferido. Pero Robin me dijo, no, porque yo voy a hablar de colaboración luego, y voy a hablar de colaboración 40 minutos, y cuando ese va a ser mi panel de colaboración, el que no me voy a perder. Pero por mientras le dije, bueno, entonces, ¿de qué hablamos? Hablemos de la familia siendo emprendedora mujer. ¿Qué pasa con el marido? Hace un cambio, sigo en la pregunta. Pero ya que vamos a hablar de colaboración después y de espacio colaborativo y lo importante que es hoy día, en el fondo, entender que todas las empresas del futuro van a ser empresas colaborativas, podemos hablar de qué pasa con la familia cuando uno logra hacer grandes empresas, en el fondo qué pasa con el marido, qué pasa con tus hijos. Es verdad que si una mujer es muy exitosa y triunfadora, tiene grandes problemas con los hijos o con la familia. Robin.
I'm laughing because my husband is in the front row and he doesn't have the translation going, so he had no idea what the question was. When I'm getting a lot of time today to speak to you, and so this is the women's panel, so I thought, let's do it. I think one of the things that women around the world are thinking is, I might want to get married one day, and I want to have children. How can I possibly also do this other thing? And I have 3 children, and for the first 12 years of those children, I want to say I was a very angry person because I stayed home. Some years I stayed home full-time, some years I stayed home part-time, and while I was doing it, I thought, I'm a very well-educated person and I am very ambitious, and no one told me how these children were going to take up so much time to do it the right way. And so I was really very angry. I launched Zipcar when my 3 children were 6, 9, and 12. And I joke that that was the moment when I heard the good idea that I loved. And it was the moment when my children were required by law to be away from me for large periods of time every day. So it was a very good moment. Getting to my husband. I have a husband that every single person who has ever met him thinks he's the best person in the world. It's very, very annoying to be his brother or his wife because we're never as good. But I want to put this in context, is that I think women around the world, when they get married, they start a relationship with their spouse that is a very negative one. They don't start at the first day, this is equal. We both are working. You're going to cook dinner half the time because I'm coming home from work just as tired as you're coming home from work. And when we have children, you have to learn how to do it as much as I have to know how to do it. And so in our family, when I started Zipcar, the first year of doing Zipcar, I was a terrible mother. I will tell you, I was a terrible mother. I was working all the time. My children were very young, and they were basically nearby me, completely neglected. And after a year of this, my husband and I realized that Zipcar was a fabulous thing, and he should quit his job and become the primary caretaker. And so he did 2 things. One, he quit his job and became the primary caretaker of the children, and he also became my chief technology officer and worked half-time. I paid him half-time, and he worked from 8 in the morning until 3. He would pick up the children, become a father, and then when they went to bed, I got a free other half-time as CTO of Zipcar. So he worked part-time at Zipcar for probably 2.5 years, and then he worked an additional 5 years full-time when we switched back. And so during those 3 years when I was founding and running this company, I joke that I was the 1950s father. I would leave early, I would come home late, and I would say, hush you children, I've had a hard day, where's my dinner, give me my slippers. And I did that for 3 years, and my children had the weekends. So just speaking to men and women in the audience, we need equality of child rearing, equality of responsibility, and equality of opportunity. So in the course of your whole life, there will be some times when you, man or woman, will be the primary caretaker of children. And there will be some times when it's the other person's turn to be the primary caretaker. But I think we will never see equality, and women will continue to feel this burden if they don't choose the right spouses. And one more piece, just not around children. When you're doing a startup, we've talked about it being very, very hard, and it is a complete roller coaster. If your entire life and your entire self-definition is around your company, when things are bad, you're going to want to kill yourself. So you must always have a fabulous other person out there who doesn't care what you're doing about your company, and they love you anyway. And that is what will take you through very, very hard times. So whether or not you have children, you need to have a very strong support system because it's a hard job.
If I could quickly just talk into the tunes of, you know, there's a lot of women who are, well, I'm single now and I have children. I cannot tell you how important it is for wherever you go, because I was a single mom when I started SecureWorks, and I'd always tell my daughter, because I wanted her to feel good about being away from her, because kids will grow up knowing you really spend time with what you love. So never come home and say, I hate my job, I don't know what's going on, I wish I didn't have to do this, but I'm doing this for us. You're like, kids grow up wanting nothing to do with capitalism then. They really resent it. So I had that always in the back of my mind, and I wanted my daughter, because the same thing, your days are just eaten up. Before you look up, it's been 12 hours, and you haven't been home yet. And I wanted my daughter to always feel good. I said, baby, when you wake up in the morning, now remember, I got to go see a man, he owns this company. And she goes, whoa, men own companies? I mean, I know we let them be doctors. I'm like, yeah, of course they do. She's like, I've never met a man that owns a company, because she was so ingrained in seeing all my girlfriends running companies and all of us doing this, just game changers in information security. And it was just a panel of women and a board of women from all over the world. But it raised your children so they're excited for the difference you're making, even though you're not at home all the time.
Right. Solo preguntar, Robin, quiero preguntarle a las que tenemos hijos chicos y estamos de repente en este camino de trabajo, que no sé si trabajamos más que una mujer que trabaja en un banco, pero da la impresión para el resto que tenemos un trabajo que nos toma muchísimas horas. ¿Has tenido problema con tus hijos de grande, de que te digan, mamá, trabajaste mucho, no estuviste? ¿Ha pasado eso o nunca ha sido un tema?
My children are now 20, 23, and 26. And I'm very careful that I can't take all the credit, because if they were bad, I wouldn't want to take the credit. So there are 3 children, and they are really amazing, strong, impressive children, young adults. And I know, because they tell me often, that my husband and I gave them fabulous childhoods, and that they look back on it with incredible fondness, their childhood. So again, and to what Joan was saying, my guess is Joan had people taking care that love their children, and you had your nurse who was taking care. So they have to feel the security. So I look at it and I think, I made the right choices as I went along. And they were hard choices, but now we're at the end, and I have to say out loud one time, you should go look at my oldest daughter. So Google Cameron Russell, TED.com, and she's 26, and she gave a talk that exhibits these very values. I'm telling you that 6.5 million people have seen, and at TED it's considered one of the best talks ever. And it's how to give a good talk. They use her talk as an example. But if you look at that, you'll see with what pride I have of that child, and my other children are equally great people.
Oh, congratulations. Bueno, yo también soy una mamá que he criado a mi hijo en solitario. Tengo un niño de 10 años. Y yo cambié mi vida radicalmente cuando me di cuenta que trabajar en el mundo de las comunicaciones estaba robándome a mí y a mi hijo la privacidad necesaria para criarlo, y hice un cambio dramático. Creo que esto también es importante en el mundo de aquellos que nos abocamos en el emprendimiento, es aprender a reinventarnos, y yo solté todo lo conocido, porque 20 años trabajando en el mundo de las comunicaciones era no solamente mi trabajo, era mi oficio, mi vida. Había puesto toda la energía ahí, había trabajado en grandes proyectos, había realizado programas extraordinarios, había sido, gracias a Dios, muy premiada también, pero era ya mi vida trabajar en el mundo de las comunicaciones, y decidí dejarlo y abandonarlo completamente. Esto ya no era sano para mí ni para mi hijo, y mucha gente me miró y dijo, Cecilia, pero ¿cómo vas a hacer esto? Es tu vida, tu carrera. es lo que te define. Y dije, perdón, si esto es lo que me define, estamos mal. O sea, nunca pretendí que mi trabajo me definiera como persona. Soy mamá primero. Y la verdad es que muchos dijeron, bueno, es una locura, no puedes soltar una liana antes de que tomes la otra. Yo me tiré al vacío y tengo que admitir que fue la mejor decisión que tomé en mi vida. Aparecieron muchas empresas que querían que fuera testimonial para ellos, que trabajara como embajadoras y como rostro y como representantes de la marca, y una de ellas, Falabella, me mencionó el tema de la moda. Y si bien es cierto, yo cuando había salido del colegio, bueno, entré a estudiar ingeniería civil porque me encanta la matemática, pero terminé estudiando diseño, tenía ese cartón guardado más de 20 años y me dicen, ¿podría Cecilia hacernos una campaña y traernos a los mejores diseñadores de afuera, introducirnos al mundo de la moda a través de tu gusto y tu estilo? ¿Por qué no vemos la manera de traer a estos grandes diseñadores a Chile? Entonces yo los quedé mirando y le dije, perdón, ¿para qué los vamos a traer? Yo te hago una colección. Y me miraron como si me hubiese pegado en la cabeza, evidentemente. Entonces le dije, claro, yo te puedo hacer una línea de ropa. Pero tú, Cecilia, ¿cómo, en qué momento? Intentemos, probemos. Y la verdad es que eso sucedió hace 7, 8 años atrás y afortunadamente la empresa funcionó. Hoy es una marca que se vende en Chile, Colombia, Perú, a través de Falabella, que es una empresa importantísima, con una perspectiva de crecimiento muy grande, pero lo más impresionante de todo es que a la vuelta de la esquina, soltando y liberándome de aquello que era mi plataforma, perdiendo el piso, como se dice, encontré un nuevo camino y algo que me hizo crecer como profesional y también como mujer, porque empecé a trabajar en casa y como trabajaba en casa he podido acompañar mucho más a mi hijo y creo que ha sido la mejor decisión. Pero sí, lo que dice Robin, ella ha tenido su partner, ella habla de la colaboración en el mundo empresarial, también tiene que ser al interior del hogar, para aquellas como Ingrid y como Joan y yo, que vamos solas por la vida, tenemos que ingeniarnos de manera bastante más especial y terminamos siendo bastante magos, yo creo, porque de alguna manera we pull it off, right? We definitely do. Pero es difícil, pero diría que ser madre es una bendición.
Bueno, yo quería dejarles un ratito a cada una por si querían decir algo que trajeran o algo preparado totalmente libre de qué querían decir o de emprendimiento femenino, pero me están diciendo que dejemos al público hacer, sí, me están diciendo que preguntas del público, ¿no las dejamos un ratito hablar a cada una? Que son tan increíbles todas que... Ya, bueno, ¿qué? ¿Alguna trajo algo? Todas, sí. Question. Bueno, preguntas entonces.
¿Alguna pregunta o nos lanzamos nosotros?
Yes, there's one here.
Hello, I'm Max Morales from Andes Wines. Considering what you're doing, you're focusing now in Latin America, maybe doing some projects in Chile. What are you looking for in women? We have a person working in the company doing innovation in wine and do it by Pamela in the company. What are you looking for in entrepreneur mixed with innovation and social work or business, if you're looking for a project to invest, to Ingrid. We've been in Twitter, Andes Wines in Twitter, so we've been exchanged.
Sure, and thank you for the question. I think, so as far as looking for projects, things to invest in, and this is really more just feedback for everyone now that I have had the benefit of being a lifelong entrepreneur, but now I sit with an executive inside this former Fortune 50 running a fund. And so I've seen both sides. How do you actually get a deal done? How do you get a project funded? And we talked about this a little bit earlier, but so what I'd like to suggest is this. First of all, the idea, again, you talked about social good, but we want to see what is your big idea, but very clearly and succinctly. I can't tell you, as many people know, I personally have 3 emails with 3 people trying to get through all my emails because there's so many requests. So if you think about how does somebody rise to the top and secure a relationship where we might actually fund, You've got to be able to tell your idea very clearly so that it does rise to the top. The second thing we want to understand is, okay, so you've got the great idea. What is the impact it's going to have? How many jobs are you going to create? How is it going to impact Chile? How is it really going to benefit the country? That social good aspect of it. And then the third piece of it is, how's it going to make money? And then not only how's it going to make money, but how's it going to make me money? Because as much as I would like to just say I love to do things because it is a great idea and it makes me feel good, the reality of it is if you're talking to somebody who has the ability to write the check, unless they're giving you a check as a gift and not expecting anything back, think about it from their perspective. They're looking at this as, what is the return I'm going to get out of it? So if you're very clear on those things, those are the things that we look for.
Because what happens in Chile in particular, we are very critical about the projects are not global. If you focus, for example, in wine, gastronomy, or hospitality, we think that we've been creating an ecosystem in the wine business that is it's the same in over 40 countries. I think the message, as you say, is when you think, you have to think big. But in a country like Chile, when you do that, you are totally isolated. And we've been doing these projects and this company, and it's hard to get network in Chile. And these activities, I think, help to see that many of these 400 people, 500, have the idea, but it's not global. How, us, at the end, do you think we will be able to get global if we have a global idea through your guidance, for example?
Well, so on something like that, I think if you look at any industry, and I love wine. I've never invested in wine. I don't know how it runs. I would love to. My husband would kill me because I put all our money there. But if you look at guys like, so in the United States, take a guy like Gary Vaynerchuk. Do you guys know who this is? Raise your hand. Okay, so not a lot of people, though.
Yeah.
And this is a country where wine is very popular. Sure. But go check out, just as an example, go check out Gary Vaynerchuk. He started something called the Wine Library. And what I love about Gary, and we've become good friends over the years, is because he was able to take an industry like wine and say, now how do I make this relevant to other people besides who's in my local community? And he started this club that allows him now to distribute to people all over the world because he thought about it from the technology standpoint. How can I use technology to break through the barriers of, in this case, Chile, and distribute in other places? So I look at Gary's a great example. There's also a new company I just saw out of Boston called Drink Crate. They're really super cool. That's how I'd be thinking about it.
Thank you.
Bueno, ¿más preguntas o no hay tiempo?
Hi, this is for all of you. Has any of you personally invested as an angel in women-run businesses? And so if you can talk about that.
Absolutely.
I've only invested in my own companies. No, I haven't.
Yes, we have. And the challenges are the difference is this. Women build families, men build teams. And the first thing we do as angel investors when we work into a woman-owned, ran, or led startup is get them to understand this isn't about you doing everybody's job. People do their jobs, and if they don't do their jobs, they get fired. Men have no problem understanding I gave you a task, it's not getting done over and over again, maybe you're not fit for the job. As women, we step in and do the role for them, and then we wonder why we're exhausted. And then we get mad when we get replaced, and the next guy just goes in, the next CEO, woman or man, second CEO goes in and fires everybody. Like, well, I could have done that. So as an angel investor, it's very important when I get behind and fund women-owned companies and women-led companies, is that's the first HR issue they understand is, how many jobs are you doing? Because I need you to do your job, and do you have the strength to hire people to do their jobs? And if they don't do it, leave them alone and get rid of them and replace them. It's the number one challenge as an angel investor. The second challenge is for women to not be afraid of letting people down. So many times companies, we're talking about the 2%, you know, what is really the numbers. Women are starting companies at a faster rate globally in every country, but the growth isn't there, and the venture capital and the seed investment's not there because they're afraid of taking someone's money, making a commitment they can't live up to. And we got to get past that fear. You do the best you can do, you get the knowledge you need, and you make the best decision. No one blames you for failure. People do blame you for pretending that you know everything or not doing anything until you know it. Those are the two challenges we have.
Bueno, y para terminar, cortito, una idea. Cecilia, ¿podríamos partir por ti? En el fondo...
Bueno, lo que hablaba, la pregunta que tiene relación a si alguna de nosotras había invertido en alguna empresa femenina. En realidad, mi proyecto más magnífico y maravilloso y el cual más me gratifica tiene que ver con haber invertido en montar una escuela en La Rioja, en Argentina. Fue un proyecto obviamente sin fines de lucro. La idea era apoyar a la comunidad y levantar de la miseria a un sector de la población y obviamente entregarle educación a los niños, pero no educación formal. Aquí lo que sentí que era necesario era remecer la estructura, diría, valórica y equiparles el alma, porque el asunto era que los niños estaban en las calles porque los padres los enviaban a mendigar. Les daban alcohol en la noche un poquito porque el resto se lo tomaban ellos para no darles de cenar y acostarlos rápido. Y durante el día mendigaban en las calles. Entonces llevarlos al colegio era una quimera, era algo muy difícil de conseguir. Así es que decidí hacer esta escuela que de alguna manera abrazara a la familia. Porque cuando uno solo piensa en educar a los niños, muchas veces si los padres no han tenido una educación formal y no están preparados, tienen un gran miedo a perder a sus hijos, ¿no? A quedar descreditados de alguna manera, sin la autoridad que necesita un padre para ser padre. Así es que abracé a toda la familia y al momento de crear esta escuela hice un decálogo de las cosas que quería impartir y la verdad es que yo quisiera cerrar con eso porque es lo que más me entusiasma y me ha ayudado a mí a ser mejor mamá, me ha ayudado a emprender con mayor entusiasmo, me ha ayudado a vivir con mayor gratitud y me ha hecho sentir mucho más plena. Y ese ejercicio que yo hice fue con respecto a lo que quería entregarle a estos niños. Y me di cuenta que no era necesariamente, como decía, educación formal, sino valores. Y dije que me gustaría enseñarles, bueno, esencialmente quisiera lograr dos cosas, que despertaran su conciencia y que se hicieran responsables de su vida. Y para ello dije, se necesitan 4 puntos que sostengan esta nueva educación, esta nueva manera de equiparlos. Y ojalá aprendan en primer lugar a resolver los problemas sin violencia, a actuar sin egoísmo, porque los niños generalmente piensan, no, esto es mío, nosotros también. Cuando emprendemos algo, no, esto es mío, este es mi territorio, no lo cruce. Y un poco lo que habla Robin también de estas empresas colaborativas, que son las empresas del futuro, que tienen que ver con trabajar en equipo, porque tú sientes y sabes que no hay nada que sea tuyo, que todo es de todos, ¿no? Y cuando todo es de todos, nos preocupamos del lado y compartimos. El tercer punto, actuar sin temor. Y esa era una cosa que yo también la asimilé muy profundamente porque uno cuando cría niños dice cuidado mi amor con eso, no te acerques a un extraño, cierra la puerta bien, protégete y es cuidado y lo llenas de temor y de inseguridades. Y el tercero y el obviamente más difícil de conseguir, pero en esa lucha al menos estoy, en amar sin condiciones. Así es que esto obviamente tiene que ver con un emprendimiento que hice que es el que más satisfacciones me ha traído, pero al final quería compartirlo porque creo que es como algo muy inspirador para sea cual sea el camino, montar una empresa que puedes venderla en $600 millones como ha hecho Joan, pero no creo que haya más de 5 mujeres en el planeta que lo hayan logrado. Y la meta supongo que no será hacer necesariamente empresas que valgan millones de dólares, sino simplemente buscar la plenitud en la vida y tratar de ser felices.
Qué lindo, nuestra emprendedora social se pasó, qué lindo.
I just wanted to close, since I'm going to be saying many other things later today. I had a list of some researched facts. This is the most recent research that I think these numbers are global numbers about why you want to include women and invest in women. So just a few facts that I'm reading here. Venture-backed companies that include females as senior executives are more likely to succeed than companies with only men in charge. Venture capital firms that invest in women-led businesses performed better than all men-led businesses. Women-led technology companies are more capital efficient, they use money better, achieving a 35% higher return on the money spent than men companies. And when those women-led companies are venture-backed, they bring in 12% higher revenue than male-owned tech companies. The high-tech companies women built are more capital efficient than the norm. The average venture-backed company run by women uses 1/3 less money than the men companies to achieve the same amount. Organizations that are the most inclusive of women in top management have a 35% higher return on equity and 34% better return to shareholders versus their peers. So I guess I want to say, invest in women, make sure women are in your senior teams, and you will do better.
Y busquen socias